I'll join palms. Repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. It's funny, I had a thought this morning. Only one. It's a good morning. And that, for whatever reason, people, maybe none of you, but people often want to be somewhere else other than where they are most of the time. And it's funny because, so how many of you want to be here right now? Every hand up. There's probably one or two who got forced here, but and I think the question is to ask ourselves when we go throughout our days, can we say that to ourselves a lot? Do we want to be here? And even when we find the answer might be no, can we still just be present with it? I've seen over the years that so many people come to meditation and Buddhist practice because they're not comfortable where they are, how they are, who they are. And so they come to a place, and in that place, whether it's here or anywhere, there's a sense of, yes, this is where I want to be. And if you think of all the other places that you want to be, or other places that you are, and you say to yourself, I don't want to be here, most of them, many of them, you can't just get up and leave. So it's important to understand that this practice isn't about creating your ideal perfect life. Because if you try to create your ideal perfect life, you'll spend your entire life trying to create your ideal perfect life. And maybe never get there. I find it much easier, healthier, and I think more beneficial to just learn to be at peace with where you are, regardless of where that is. And so we do the meditation practice to learn how to stay present, to learn how to be in this moment. Now, from my, quick science experiment, everybody raised their hands for the most part and said, yes, this is where I want to be. So it should be relatively easier right now. We're going to do meditation. Your mind's going to race. It's going to jump. It's going to wonder. It's going to ponder. It's going to try to figure stuff out. But at the end of the day, for the most part, you're sitting where you want to be. Reflect on that later today, tonight, tomorrow, when you find yourself in a place that you don't want to be. Can you just sit with it and be with it? To me, I've never seen meditation or Buddhist practice as a vacation. It's not an escape. It's learning to be with things as they are. And letting go of trying to control how things are. So I know that's very simple. You all will do fantastic at it, I'm sure. So we'll start with the meditation practice. For those who are sitting for the first time or maybe here for the first time, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is this not working? Am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. If you stop breathing, it's going to be difficult for the rest of us, so please keep breathing. It'll make your practice easier. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. Often if you're on the cushions, it helps slide into the front third. Pushing stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed, hands are on the knees or in the lap. If you're on the benches or chairs, same thing. Being very aware of your posture, not being lazy with posture, but also not being so rigid. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth will be open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. And throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds. These are not distractions, not disruptions. Simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Gently guide the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectation. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Where's your mind? Return to breath. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet. Wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. body still, rested. And the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. The most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than anyone in this room, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us in this room, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. more stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of your thoughts, and learning to be nice to everyone, always. And that's why it's difficult. We don't meditate to be good at meditation. Doesn't matter how long you can sit perfectly still and quiet and breathe. If the moment you get up, everything out there makes you angry. We practice this when we go into our existing lives. We bring this level of clarity, stillness, calmness, focus into everything you do. To me, one of the greatest understandings of this practice is to recognize there's not meditation and Buddhism and then your life. It is all the same thing. Meditation, Buddhist practice is your everyday life. Doesn't matter if you're Christian, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, pagan, or lack thereof. We have an opportunity every moment of our lives to act with loving kindness, compassion, generosity, morality, patience, every day. This is the essence of Buddhist practice. This is what he taught. He taught people to be kind. He taught people to be forgiving. He taught people to be present. That's the practice. And I always like to touch on the fundamentals and the basics because to me, there is nothing more than that. Often, like many things in life, we think it's complicated or that there's some systematic way to go about this Buddhist thing. We all know how to be kind, and sometimes we choose to, and sometimes we don't. We all know how to be caring and forgiving, and sometimes we choose to, and sometimes we don't. That's it. But it starts with slowing down and recognizing that if we sit here quietly for 20 minutes and your mind races all day, or I should say for 20 minutes and all day. But for this example, if we recognize our mind races for 20 minutes, then that's really a reflection of what our mind is doing all day long. And so for the last 20 minutes, as your mind was racing and racing and racing, you just sat with it. So as we go through our days and our mind races and races and races, same thing. Learn to just sit with it. We don't have to act on every thought. We don't have to respond to every thought. We don't have to do anything with every thought. Just let it pass because I promise you there will be more waiting for you. We don't have to act on every single one. In fact, if we act on all of them, we might actually miss some of the pleasant ones that come around once every 1,000 thought. So be patient. So I'd rather just stop there and open up to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, that you're sitting with that I can address. Go from there. Yeah.
How often do you recommend that we do this our first time?
Nice. When you say this, do you mean meditate?
Yes.
How often do you brush your teeth?
Good time to do there.
There you go. I was only going to recommend once a day, but the woman next to you is laughing. Are you happy he brushes his teeth 3 times a day? Yeah. There you go. She's making this really easy for me, right? I'm sure you don't need it. It's only him, right? So the practice is to understand that we brush our teeth every day. Right? We comb our hair. I don't have to worry about that every day. We do all these fundamental things every day because we want to take care of them. And brushing our teeth takes, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You do it the same, basically probably same time, or, it's the same practice every day. You don't even think about it, right? You just brush your teeth. And it's just something that gets done. And we do it because we want healthy teeth and everything that goes along with that. And so with the mind, it's the same thing. If we don't brush your teeth for a week, mouth gets pretty nasty, right? Yeah, and you brush 3 times a day. So imagine not doing it for a week. So then we use that, I use that as a metaphor for the mind, that if we go a week without taking care of our mind, if we go 20 years without taking care of our mind, it gets to be a bit of a mess. And I say that speaking only from extreme personal experience, right? So I recommend every single day, not 20 minutes, not 40 minutes, not 2 hours, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. If you only have time to take 3 deep breaths, then take 3 deep breaths. But I suggest learning to make it a habit. I suggest trying it every day for 3 weeks for 5 minutes, and then take a week off. Why would I suggest taking a week off?
To
See the difference. And sometimes that difference is the motivation and inspiration we need to continue the practice. But if you tell yourself you're going to do this every day for 20 minutes, realistically, it's not going to happen. If you tell yourself I'm going to do this every day for 3 minutes, it goes up to like 0.1%, right? Much better odds. So whatever time you wake up in the morning, get up 5 minutes earlier, splash water in your face, brush those teeth, get energy going a little bit, and then just sit down, close your eyes, take deep breaths for a few moments. And there's your meditation practice. I used to recommend 3 times a day, truly. Morning, then you get through your day, noon, 2 o'clock, you're stressed out, you're angry, you're frustrated, everything's already gone wrong. So take 5 minutes, walk outside, do the same thing again. Nighttime, we're tired, we're exhausted, we're stressed out, we can't sleep. Try this before you go to sleep. So 3 times a day is actually a great practice. And then if you miss it twice, you've still done it once a day. So the last thing I'll say on that is don't complicate it, especially for someone who's new. How'd you feel after meditation?
Very calm.
Very calm.
Not stressed.
And relaxed and not stressed. And without going into too many details, when was the last time you felt that way?
I don't even remember.
Yeah, 1986, right? It was a good year. So that's the idea. Is it's been so long. You don't even remember last time you were calm and felt this relaxed or lacking this stress. So who made you feel the way you did after meditation? Who specifically? You. Who you stuck with all day long, like it or not? You. What this teaches you in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, spending no money, just sitting and breathing, you can feel this way. So it's, it gives you hope. Yeah. And again, for someone who's new, when you're looking around the room and you see 60, 70 people in here, none of them are calm and peaceful all the time, or now either. They're all just as stressed out and miserable and depressed and anxious and sad and scared like you are. Don't let their calm demeanor fool you. I just didn't want you to think you were the only one in the room that, yeah. Does that help? Yeah. Sure. Other questions? Yeah.
Will you talk, excuse me, will you talk a little bit about the transfer of merit?
Yeah. So at the end, which we'll do today, as I always do, we do what's called a transfer of merit. And, each Buddhist tradition is different, each lineage, each culture is different. And so what I practice and what I share is what I learned through really Taiwanese Buddhist practice. And it's very common, as it is in most Buddhist traditions, to my knowledge, to transfer merit. And so at the end, just to put it into context, what we'll do, what I always do is ask everyone to join palms. And I say, may the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to someone during their time of suffering. And so the idea is that it has a lot to do with karma. And in Buddhist practice, merit, all of this stuff, without getting too technical to freak any of you out, what's your name, the brand new guy? Sorry. Jeff. Oh, good name. Yeah, I appreciate that. Close your ears.
Tell him where you were. He said he's around here somewhere. So.
Yeah. Close your ears for a minute. But karma and rebirth and merit is all tied together. What determines rebirth is merit. What determines karma is merit. But if you're not into rebirth or reincarnation or any of that kind of stuff, what determines your afternoon is merit. What determines tomorrow is merit. It's your karma. Now, karma and merit, when we do good, right? Good goes out, ideally. Body, speech, mind. I talk about karma generated 3 ways: body, speech, mind. So we think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. Ideally, we're bringing that into the world. That doesn't always mean that good is going to come back. But the idea is that the more good that we practice, the more merit that we generate, the more karma that is healthy and positive that we put out, the likelihood is a lot of that is going to come back, right? Not always, and definitely not immediately, if at all. But we kind of accumulate, for lack of better words, good karma, positive merit. But the practice, as you know, is not about me. It's not about you. So as you're gaining, you want to continue to give. But the funny thing is, the more you give, the more that comes back. So it's this endless cycle of giving, 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 getting, more to give, more to give, more to give, more to get, more to get, more to get, right? And it just continues. So with practice, you recognize that we, in this moment, the intention in this room during the time that we sit together is really pretty beautiful. You know, nobody came here to be angry and mad and, you know, destructive towards themselves or others. We came here to be positive and healthy and find a sense of peace, and that's a beautiful thing. So the merit that we're accruing in that moment with our karma is really beautiful. But we got to give it away. It's not for us. So we send it to those Tibetan practice called Tonglen, kind of a giving, you know, sending, receiving of compassion. Similar idea. That we accumulate merit and we pass it to those who may be sick, maybe ill, maybe have passed, maybe are struggling heavily. You know, and it's a beautiful practice I've seen people over the years adopt into their own way. You know, you're having a good day, things are going well, and you start thinking, what tends to settle in a lot is like greed. Oh, I like the good stuff. I want more of that, right? And then we kind of try to keep that. So throughout your day, you have positive merit. Think about others with that, what you can do with that. You know? Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Other thoughts, questions? Ultimately, the practice isn't about us, is what it comes down to. We come into it thinking it's about me. I'm struggling, I'm suffering, I need help. But with practice, we recognize it is that actual craving and desire to endlessly think that you are the most important person in the world and the only one that needs help that actually leads to so much suffering. We must keep our attention and awareness on others. Yeah.
Can you comment on some of the work you've done in prisons?
Yeah. So to comment on some of the work I've done in prisons, I started doing prison work 2003, 16 years ago. I was 6. And
Me too.
it's funny because I'll tell a couple stories, but even the way I got started in it, to me, is the most powerful piece of the story, or whatever I'm going to say right now. 2003, I started going to, you know, Shifang Temple down the street, and I had been there all of like 3 weeks. So Jeff, imagine you like 3 weeks from now, and the guy who'd been doing the prison program, he was Ron. He was from Germany. He said, "I'm going back to visit family for a few weeks. Can somebody take over the prison program for me?" And Venerable Yijur, the head nun, she said, "Jeff will do it." I said, "Okay, great." She said, "Go down to the end of the street. There's this couple down there, Danny and Shirley. Go meet with them. They've been doing prison work for a while. They'll help you out." So I was like, "Okay." Went and talked to them for like an hour, and the next week I was in prison, you know? And it became the most powerful, beautiful, incredible practice of my life. You know, at that time, you know, still pretty depressed, angry kid. And I would be having whatever I considered to be the worst day of my life, you know, because like, I don't know, I didn't get every single thing I wanted that day and my latte wasn't made properly. And then I go into prison and I sit with people who, whether they have or have not done whatever led them to be there, it's an incredibly intense amount of suffering and anguish, and it's a really heavy environment. And the first couple of years, it was funny because I really felt selfish doing it. I felt like, there I am sharing the little bit I knew about meditation and Buddhist practice with them, and I left feeling incredible. And I thought, well, I'm just doing this for me. But what I realized was they were also benefiting from it. And I'll never forget walking out of MCC every morning, and I just felt amazing. Downtown at 808 Union Street, and I walked out and I was like, wow, my life is amazing. So, that continued. It's been 16 years. I've been into, from county jails, juvenile detention facilities here in New Mexico, to level 4 maximum security, where people are there for life. You walk in, you sign a sheet. That's a waiver that basically says there's a no hostage clause, which means if they take you hostage, you're still getting shot at. And I've met some of the most incredibly kind and wonderful people inside. I've always felt incredibly safe there. I feel more safe there than I do a lot of places roaming around outside of prison. The people I've been sitting with have been, it's been once or twice a week on and off for 16 years, like I said, and they're always so respectful. They're so kind. I spent 3 years at the psych units, Central Jail downtown with the men, Las Colinas psych unit with the women. They call them the PSU, Psychiatric Security Unit. Some people are getting out in 6 weeks. Some people are never getting out. 70% of the people you sit with are coming out, and 78% recidivism rate are going back. So it's been an eye-opening experience all these years. I think one of the most incredible things, my experience, was leading a training inside. This is at the South Bay facility. And I trained, which I do pretty often, or was doing pretty often up until the last year or two. I would train them inside so they could continue the practice. And I had 6 men, all from different, prisons become a pretty segregated place in one big room. If it was this room, whatever little bubble you found yourself in, there would be about 8 different pockets of people sitting in this room in different corners. And I trained 6, all from different races. And then we all went in and sat together. And we all led the rest of the men together. And one of the guys came up to me. I told him afterwards, I said I was proud of him. And he said, he was probably 30-something years old. And he said, this is the first time in my life anyone's ever told me they're proud of me. So it's a population of people that often get forgotten about and kind of spit on and thrown away, when they also are human and products of how they were raised and their experiences that they went through. And so I'm always honored and humbled to serve that population. Yeah. Thanks. Other thoughts, questions? The people there are kinder than most places I go to.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. They're just grateful you're there. You learn a lot from people who've had, and again, this isn't about whether they deserved it or right or wrong or what they did, but so many, and again, this isn't about debating rightfully so or not, but so many of their freedoms have been taken away and they have little to nothing. And when you work with people like that, it goes to show you how much those who don't have that, how much we take for granted all that we have and the freedoms that we have and the liberties we have to just pick up and do whatever we want to do at any moment in time. And, I know one of the facilities, without getting into details, are where, they're in their cells 23 hours a day in a room, it's tiny. And they get 1 hour a day outside. The outside isn't really outside. So, yeah. Other thoughts, questions, or anything? Meditation, Buddhist practice. Prison. It's just a male. Yeah, in the back.
Kind of adding on to that, when I worked with students in the past, and I brought what I learned, which is bringing to the classroom, because I felt like you couldn't learn if people were in such negative kind of spaces.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about it 5 minutes here and there, but it was a couple weeks later, a student said to me that it was the first time she learned she could regulate herself and calm down.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, she did it 10 minutes every day.
Yep.
And she was amazed. And I was like, you're amazing that you did it once. And then you realize I did it 10 minutes every day.
Yeah.
So and what I've gotten from this practice of coming and being with the Sangha is like more willingness to practice at least non-reaction to things and be with the breath.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes maybe compassion and suffering, all of that is too much, but at least it can stop for a moment. And in that space, recognize maybe somebody else is suffering and kind of get on their own path.
Definitely. Yeah, a lot of times people, there's a question, and this is what came to mind when you said that, and I appreciate you sharing that there's a question that, it's a theme of questions that always get asked, especially for those who are new. And one is, how to practice more compassion. And my response always is, the way we overcome anger, which is one of the root causes of our suffering, greed, anger, ignorance, it's a second noble truth. The Buddha said the first thing is life is filled with dukkha, that you're going to suffer a lot, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. The second thing he said is, what's the cause? The cause is greed, anger, ignorance. It's called the three poisons. We overcome the greed, the anger, the ignorance with generosity, compassion, and wisdom. The third noble truth is the ending of suffering, nirvana, liberation, right? Freedom from suffering. And the fourth one is the path, and that's the Eightfold Path. Correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. All of that's on Google for free. Most translations are pretty good, right? But that's the essence of the Buddhist teachings right there. That's it. That little thing that I just told you, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, is all I feel you need to know to practice Buddhism for your entire life. That's it, right? I just saved you a ton of time reading. But the key about how to practice more compassion, to me, is to practice less anger. And that's what I heard when you spoke, is that if we become aware of our thoughts and our breath, and we just sit with things when we're with it, and we're maybe in a not so pleasant, happy mood, and we want to bring anger out towards ourselves or towards others, the simple act of stopping that is incredibly compassionate. The simple act of not yelling and screaming at someone who's suffering, and kind of that, keeping quiet, is incredibly compassionate, because we don't know what pain and suffering that yelling at that person may bring. And when we yell at somebody, we're really just making ourselves feel better, right? So to learn to be silent with that can be compassionate. The flip side is when somebody's yelling at you, which might happen once in a while, to understand that that's what they need to do. When they're yelling at you, that's what they need. They're in pain. They're suffering. And very often, it might be because you did something you shouldn't have done. So learn to be with that as well. I'll never forget, a couple years ago, somebody asked a question about, she was on her way here, and her wife dropped her off, and she said, my wife's really angry at me. Her question, she was sitting like right there, and she said, my wife's really angry at me, and I want to learn how can I feel better about her being angry at me? I was like, wait a minute. Did you do something you shouldn't have done? And she said, yes. And I said, well, then why are you so concerned about you feeling better because she's angry? Maybe recognize that what you did caused her pain. And maybe think about, why is she angry? Not how you can immediately make yourself feel better. And it's kind of what I was talking about at the beginning, that with this practice, we often come into it because we want to feel better. And I get that. That makes sense. Of course we do. But don't forget, it is that constant seeking and craving and desire to get everything you want the way you want it, so you think you can feel better. That really is the illusion. Because you'll just spend your entire life chasing something. So, other thoughts, questions before we wrap up? Do one more question. Yeah, Kathy. Oh, no, her first and Kathy first, and then you. You both at the same time, but yeah, go ahead.
Are there circumstances where kind of kindness and generosity isn't indicated?
Isn't entertained?
Isn't indicated.
Oh, indicated.
Yeah. So, particularly a kind of interpersonal thing where a lot of build-up of resentment. Of course, I'm asking for a friend.
Of course.
And, I just think that it might be letting someone off the hook to just come into it with just kindness and generosity. I mean, even if that were possible, but say that's the ideal. Is there ever a case where that shouldn't be the ideal?
I can't directly say to you that there is one blanket answer for every single scenario. But what I heard is not about letting them off of the hook. It's about letting you off of the hook. I mean, think about that expression, right? Letting someone off the hook. It's funny, it's a side thing. Expressions like these fascinate me because where they all came from, right? When I hear letting someone off of the hook, you know what I think of? Fish. Right? I'll never forget years ago, somebody in the college group, they said that for them, meditation was fishing. And someone else from the college group said, it's only silence or only meditation if you can't hear the silent screams of the fish. The fish being on the hook doesn't feel good. In that moment where you are trying, like you said, you don't see it remotely possible, or your friend doesn't see it remotely possible at that moment to cultivate any compassion or generosity towards someone else for what they may have done, right? And you wonder, should I let them off of the hook? My suggestion is to think, how can I let myself off of the hook? And as long as I'm holding on to the anger and resentment, the only one who's suffering is you, not them. They have their own hook to let go of or not, which is most likely what caused whatever they did. So I get it that someone can inflict tremendous harm or pain on us, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it might be. And we want to hold them to it because we think they deserve it. And I always, the story that always comes to mind, which you may have heard this from me or not, but Azim Kamiza, 20 plus years ago, his son was a 20-year-old college kid at San Diego State. And his son was killed by Tony Hicks, a 14-year-old gang member. Silly violence, gang-related incident. Tony wanted to get in the gang, and they said, well, then go shoot and kill this innocent pizza delivery person. So he did. Azim Kamiza and I worked with the organization, volunteered there for a couple of years. And Azim, immediately after his son was murdered, reached out to the grandfather who raised the boy and the boy himself in an act of forgiveness. They would go into schools and have for the last 20 years, and they stand on stage and they say, this man's grandson murdered my son, and I'm here to show forgiveness. And he talks about when it first happened, he had to show forgiveness or he couldn't have lived himself. The forgiveness was for him first, and he does it every single day. And many of you may, I think it was 1994, it was big news because it was the first juvenile, they just changed the law in California. So he was the first juvenile tried as an adult in the state of California, 14-year-old kid, Tony Hicks. And just recently, for the first time, was up for parole. It was granted. Azim's been trying to get him out of prison for 20 plus years to show what they can do together, going into kids and teaching nonviolence and forgiveness. Is that an easy thing? No, but I can't fathom a greater level of human experience to be any more challenging than forgiving the person who murdered your son. And knowing that that was possible from just a regular human being, it's all possible. Yeah. Go ahead and then we'll close. Yeah.
After that, I can't talk about,
Sorry.
I can't talk about my anger question.
See, that, but that's,
You just
yeah.
answered it for me.
There you go. Anger gone, right?
Anger's gone.
But go ahead if you want to share. Or no?
No.
No. All right. And that's how powerful this stuff is. Like, it's funny, I always think about, they say that when the Buddha spoke, no matter what he said, everybody was instantly enlightened. And that Azim Khamisa's story and what he did, to me, is one of the most enlightening stories there is, right? And when we hear things like that, it just, the things that we are so angry about seem so small. But I just want to close with this thought to warn us. Be very careful then, because the anger that's there in your mind is whatever it is real in your mind. And what we don't want to do is, what we want to be careful of is, sure, whatever you're angry about, relative in comparison to that is meaningless probably, but it's still real for you. Meaning we don't want to necessarily just think we can ignore it and avoid it. We must face it. Otherwise it will keep coming back. But face it with, is it really worth you being on the hook and feeling what you're feeling while you're angry? And in most cases, the things that we are so angry about, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, they're not going to mean a darn thing. And often, and I know from my personal journey, that when I was angry, I wanted somebody else to know I was angry, and I wanted them to feel that I was angry, and they needed to own it. I wanted them to own my anger. And they have their own to deal with, you know? So, yeah. So we'll close on that. Join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit from this practice be transferred to Tony Hicks for the suffering he has felt. May he be at peace and free from suffering. May we all be at peace and free from suffering.